Well, hello everyone. We are finally back today with another Frightful Fridays. If you ever thought the day would come, I don't know if I ever thought I would see this day again. So here we are back with another Frightful Fridays. If you don't know what Frightful Fridays is, it is just a series that I do here on my channel where we deep dive into a certain topic that has to do with like a conspiracy or a mythical creature or just something spooky, paranormal, creepy, any and all of the above, a phenomenon. It can be anything kind of that's thought to maybe not be true, but also thought by a lot of people to be true. And we deep dive into it, we look at the history behind it, and it's totally up to you to decide whether you believe in it or not. So the past few Frightful Fridays we've done have been like little rituals, games, things like that. I did want to take a break from that today. I don't know if any of you liked it versus didn't like it, but I did a few of them, so I kind of wanted to switch it up today and do something completely different. And today we are going to be talking about the Annabelle doll from the Conjuring movies, from obviously not just from the movies. This is based on some real, allegedly true events that took place years ago, decades ago. And obviously there's been lots of movies made on that, on The Haunting in Connecticut, on Ed and Lorraine Warren, on the Annabelle doll herself, all kinds of different things. And if you're a fan of the kind of spooky paranormal, I'm sure you know that. So today we are going to be deep diving into the world of the Annabelle doll and the history behind it, as well as Ed and Lorraine Warren just a little bit, which obviously if you are a fan of the paranormal, spooky side of the world as well, you might know about the just different conspiracies surrounding the paranormal seeking couple. And yeah, so we're gonna get into Annabelle today, and let's just do it, I guess. So who is Annabelle? Obviously we've seen Annabelle in the Annabelle movie itself, as well as the Conjuring movies, and have seen her involvement, or the doll's involvement, with Ed and Lorraine Warren as well. But in the movies, a lot of times I believe Annabelle is portrayed more as a porcelain doll, when in reality, in the actual story that the movies are based on, the Annabelle doll was actually a Raggedy Ann doll, which was a very popular type of doll at the time. Raggedy Ann and Andy, the franchise, if you are familiar with that, was very popular. And so the actual Annabelle doll was a Raggedy Ann doll, and this Raggedy Ann doll is allegedly haunted. And currently the Annabelle doll is housed in the Occult Museum of Ed and Lorraine Warren, and this museum is actually housed in the back of the Warrens' household. I believe the contents of the museum are still there, but the museum is actually closed to the public in present day. But this museum did used to be a place where you could come and tour and look at the different things. But as far as I know, that is still where the Annabelle doll is housed. And this is at the Warren home in Monroe, Connecticut. Now, of course, Ed and Lorraine Warren are very well known in the paranormal community for all of their paranormal investigations into some of the most haunted places you can think of, Lorraine being a clairvoyant and Ed being a demonologist. And we're not really going to get too into Ed and Lorraine Warren today. There are obviously a lot of different opinions out there on them. I could deep dive into the couple if that is something you guys would want to see, but we're not really going to be focusing too much on them personally today. We are just kind of going to be focusing on their involvement with the Annabelle doll. Now, going forward, these Annabelle doll accounts are according to the Warrens. So everything I believe that we know about Annabelle is from the Warrens themselves, Ed and Lorraine. So like I said, obviously this is alleged as well, but this is what we're discussing, obviously. So just letting you know. So anyway, according to the Warrens, a nursing student by the name of Donna, she was given the Raggedy Ann doll as a birthday present from her mother in 1970. Now, Donna was turning 28 at the time. Like I said, she was a nursing student, and her mother bought the doll from a hobby store. I don't know if that kind of means like a toy store type thing, but in 1970, obviously. Now, Donna loved this doll. She appreciated the gift so much, coming from her mother especially. She added it as an accessory to her apartment. She used her doll as decoration, and she just loved the doll. Very soon after, it was said that Donna started noticing that the doll was acting just very strange, totally out of the ordinary, which is weird to say about a doll. You'd think it wouldn't be acting any type of way at all because it's a doll. But Donna said she started to notice pretty quickly some strange behavior from this Raggedy Ann doll. Now, Donna had a roommate, Angie, and they lived in their apartment together, where Donna obviously kept the Raggedy Ann doll. I'm not sure if Angie was a nursing student or already a nurse, but they were in the same career path. So not that that's super relevant, but it is kind of worth noting that they are two nurses or nursing students that live together. Now, like I said, Donna started noticing very, very, very strange behaviors coming from the doll, and Angie started noticing this behavior as well. At first, they thought it was pretty innocent and they didn't really think anything of it. But they even actually tried to just accept the doll. They kind of accepted the fact that it was possessed and just kind of tried to roll with it. At first, it was said that the doll wasn't necessarily doing anything super evil or creepy. It was just kind of out of the ordinary. But then it is stated that pretty soon the doll started exhibiting very malicious, evil, just overall frightening behavior that the girls started to both notice, and that really started to scare them. So the girls experienced many different instances of scary, frightening, paranormal things happening that ultimately led them into contacting paranormal investigators. Some of these instances include Donna and Angie. They would come home and find the Annabelle doll or the Raggedy Ann doll in a different position than where they had first left the doll when they had left their house. They said that at first the movements were very small. They were very subtle movements. They didn't really notice it too much. The doll would only move positions on the bed where Donna would leave it, but would still be on the bed, just maybe in a different spot. So say Donna left the doll at the top of the bed where her head rests, then when she'd get home, the doll would possibly be at the foot of the bed, just something slight like that, but she would still be on the bed. Then this behavior from the doll quickly shifted into much more bold moves, much more noticeable moves as well. And eventually Donna and Angie would come home and find the Raggedy Ann doll in completely different rooms altogether than where they had left it. Like Donna would leave it in her room and they'd come home and find it in the living room. And there was nobody else in the home or no other way the doll would have moved except for, from their understanding, it being possessed. And oftentimes the doll would appear in a completely different room, even if that door to that room was closed. So if the doll started in the living room and ended up in the bathroom, but the bathroom door had been closed, they were like, what in the world? How did it even get in here? So obviously very creepy. I would be mortified if I saw something like that happening to me. The girls would also find the doll just sitting in creepy positions that they didn't leave it in, like with its legs crossed and its arms folded, or even one time it was described allegedly that they found the doll leaning up against a dining room chair, like standing up and leaning against a chair. It was even said that in one instance, Donna and Angie discovered the doll kneeling on a chair, which was extremely scary to them because the doll could not kneel. I guess its legs could not really bend or kneel like that, where it would still be able to stand up without falling over. And they found the doll in this position, which was noted that they were just very, very scared and freaked out by that instance. And they felt nothing but kind of maliciousness. Nothing felt safe about the doll or finding it in these different weird positions and in different rooms and just creepy places. Nothing about it felt good to the girls. One of the most creepy things that they noted happening with the doll was that the doll would allegedly write different messages on parchment paper. This especially freaked the girls out, the roommates, because they did not have any parchment papers in their house, so they had no idea how this doll even got a hold of it. But they allegedly, it was claimed that the doll would write different messages like "help me," "help us," or even "help Lou," which was Angie's boyfriend at the time, who we'll get into in a minute, but he actually ended up staying with them for a length of time while the doll was there as well. But they would come home and find "help Lou" written on some of this parchment paper, which was just very creepy to them because they were like, where did the paper even come from? They said even one time Donna came home to find what looked like blood on the back of the doll's hand, as well as 3 drops of blood on the doll's chest. And Donna had no type of explanation or rational thought of what this red substance would be on the doll. It allegedly looked very similar to blood, it was stated, and she had no other idea of what it could be besides blood. Which, I mean, what the heck, like that, I don't know. I'm trying to say like unbiased and unopinionated, but that would literally scare me so bad. I have no idea what I would do. Oh my God. And this instance of finding the blood-like substance on the doll is actually what prompted Donna to contact paranormal investigators. Now the doll and Lou, and remember Lou is Angie, the roommate's boyfriend, have their own kind of sinister relationship. Not on Lou's fault, but the doll seemed to kind of really have it out for Lou. There was many creepy instances described between the doll and Lou. Basically, since Donna had gotten the doll, Lou had been staying at the apartment with them. I'm not sure if this is because of all the scary things that were happening with the doll, but that is kind of what was implied when I was kind of looking into this case. So we're just gonna kind of say that's what it is. I'm sure that probably had something to do with it, but regardless, Lou was staying with Angie and Donna at the time. And it was stated actually that Lou even warned Donna about the doll. He said he hated the doll and felt some type of evilness around the doll, surrounding the doll. So he was even sketched out by it before anything happened. He just had a bad vibe coming from the doll, which is very interesting. The first instance that I heard about, or I read about rather, was one night when Lou was sleeping. He said he woke up from a dead sleep and he allegedly could not move at all. He felt totally paralyzed, and he looked at the foot of his bed and he saw the Annabelle doll, or the Raggedy Ann doll, at the foot of his bed. And he said at that point, this is all alleged, of course, but it was stated that at that point the Annabelle doll started to glide up his leg and start going towards his chest. He said that at that point the doll began to strangle him, and all he remembers is blacking out and then waking up the next morning. Obviously, it could be sleep paralysis that caused this. There could be a million different explanations. Could have been just a really bad nightmare, but Lou claimed that this experience was extremely real and that it happened for real, which, oh. And so in another encounter, allegedly, Lou and Angie were at the apartment by themselves. Donna was not there. They started hearing really strange noises coming from Donna's room. Lou went up to the door and he listened for a second. He put his ear to the door and tried to listen to what was going on. And it sounded like rustling noises were coming from Donna's room. I think at first it was stated that they thought it was a break-in or some person had been in there. It sounded like that, loud and intense. And then Lou actually entered the room and he saw the Raggedy Ann doll just laying on the floor, which was very strange. He then stated that he walked over to the doll, and as soon as he got over to the doll, he paused because he felt a very, very, very strong sensation that somebody was standing behind him. So because he felt this sensation of somebody standing behind him, he quickly spun around and turned, and no one was there. But it was at this point that his chest, he described it, started burning and hurting very bad. So because of this pain, he looked at his chest and discovered that it had 7 claw-like scratches right through his chest. Not right through it, but right across his chest. And nothing was there to cause it. He just all of a sudden had these very painful, very intense, like burning scratches. Like, what the heck? Whatever that spirit was clearly did not like him. So like I said, all of these instances, all of these creepy things finally led up to the girls deciding to contact, at first, a medium. Now this medium was not Ed and Lorraine Warren. This was a separate person, and I believe it said it was after about like 6 weeks of these just horrifying encounters that the girls finally decided enough was enough, and they contacted a medium. I could not find the specific name of the medium. This, of course, like I said, is according to Ed and Lorraine Warren, this whole account and story of this doll. So I'm not exactly sure what the medium's name was, but it was said that at first the girls tried this. When they contacted this medium, Donna and Angie and the medium all had a seance, which the medium decided was what they were going to do. Now, during this seance was when they discovered the spirit of a little 7-year-old girl whose name was Annabelle. And it was said that this Annabelle spirit used to play in the fields that were now where Donna and Angie's apartment was built on. So this girl, before the apartments were there, this little girl used to supposedly play in these fields. But there is a countering story to this as well. There might even be more than this, but there is an additional story that says that when this seance was held, they discovered the spirit of a 6-year-old girl who actually died in a car accident outside of Donna and Angie's apartment. This differing of accounts has definitely raised like some suspicion around Ed and Lorraine's account of this stuff happening, but I did want to obviously note that there is more than one story about what they discovered when they had this seance with the medium. But either way, whichever story it was, if this truly did happen, the girls felt very strong compassion and just very sad for the little spirit of the 7-year-old girl, and they decided that the girl should stay in the doll and they would, you know, allow that to happen because it wasn't harmful, or so they thought. But there are a lot of issues with this and a lot of just complications, because a lot of demonologists or people, you know, that are into paranormal things say that a child's spirit cannot possess anything like that, you know, be inside of a doll or anything of that nature. A childlike spirit or a child's spirit cannot do those things. So a lot of people do believe that it was a demon or some type of negative entity that was disguising itself as the 6 or 7-year-old girl Annabelle, and that was an evil spirit that was actually within the doll and not the spirit of a child. So it was definitely disguising itself, which is a very common theme that you see a lot throughout different paranormal instances. So a lot of people do believe that is what was going on. So how do Ed and Lorraine become involved? Well, after the instance with Lou where the doll scratched him and actually caused physical harm to one of Donna's friends, obviously Angie's boyfriend, she decided enough was enough and believed that the little girl's spirit that was in the doll was actually not very innocent if it was going to cause harm like that. And it was at that point that Donna decided to contact a priest by the name of Father Hegan, I think, or Hagen. At that point, she decided this is probably something much more evil that we're dealing with, and she needed to contact a priest for help. So she did just that, and that Father Hegan actually contacted his superior, whose name was Father Cook, and this father immediately got in touch with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and it was the Warrens who actually told Father Cook and convinced him that the best thing to do would be to perform an exorcism on the apartment and bless the individuals who lived inside that apartment. And it was at this point, after they performed the exorcism and Donna and Angie got in touch with the Warrens, that once the home was finished with the exorcism and it was blessed, and once the girls and Lou were blessed, Donna asked if the Raggedy Ann doll would be taken out of her possession. She did not want the doll anymore, didn't want anything to do with it at all, and asked that it be taken. And Ed and Lorraine Warren took it at that point, and it's been in their possession ever since. Like I said, it was in the museum forever, locked in that box. There's that very famous picture. I'll insert some on the screen of the Raggedy Ann doll being locked in the glass case with that sign that's on it. And it's been in their possession ever since these hauntings back in the 70s. Now, what has happened to Annabelle since the Warrens took her from Donna and Angie? There's allegedly been a lot of spooky activities surrounding the doll, even a few deaths, and just many, many freaky accounts that have happened to people who have said to have been encountering this doll right beforehand, or we'll just get into it. One of the first accounts of the spookiness that has happened with Annabelle since the Warrens took her actually happened right after they took her and on the way home. Ed and Lorraine Warren claim that they allegedly put the doll in the back seat and buckled her in and decided to take back roads home. And on these back roads, they had all kinds of trouble with their brakes and just different issues with their car, and almost had a few near accident experiences where they almost wrecked their vehicle. And it was claimed that when Ed took out the holy water and splashed it on the doll, the issues with the brakes and the other issues with the car immediately stopped. So they do believe that Annabelle was the one causing the problems with the car and wanted something very bad to happen to Ed and Lorraine. Then once the Warrens got the doll home, they claimed that the doll would allegedly like levitate and float around the house. Even when the doll was locked in an outside room of the house, it would turn up inside the house. They claimed the same things that would happen to Donna and Angie would happen to them, where they would leave her behind a closed door and find the doll in a different room. Even they claimed that she levitated, like I said. So many different spooky, paranormal, and uncontrollable things would happen with this doll. So eventually so many instances happened where this doll was just uncontrollable that the Warrens finally decided to lock up the doll for good. They had a specially made glass and wood case constructed for this doll, and they inscribed the Lord's Prayer and St. Michael's Prayer on this case as well. And Ed Warren actually said as well that for the rest of his life, he would periodically say a binding prayer over the case to ensure that the sinister spirit and the doll remained inside and trapped in there. And since being locked up, it is said that the Annabelle doll has not moved again, although it is alleged that her spirit has found ways to reach out into the earthly plane and still cause harm, which is very scary. So on that note, has the doll hurt anybody else since it's been locked up? Allegedly, yes. So Ed and Lorraine Warren also claim that the doll has harmed other individuals even since being locked up if they do not respect the doll's demonic strength and power. It was once noted that a priest was visiting the Warrens Museum. Like I said, that was in their own home, which is where many of their paranormal paraphernalia is, as well as the Annabelle doll. And a priest was visiting once, and he was actually mocking the abilities of the Annabelle doll. And Ed has said that he actually warned the priest not to do this and not to mock the doll, but the young priest allegedly laughed him off. And then on his way home, the priest was actually involved in a near-death car crash that totaled his brand new car as well. So Ed and Lorraine Warren claim that that was the doll kind of getting revenge for the priest disrespecting its ability. And Ed Warren also claims that the doll has been responsible for at least one death, which is terrifying to think about. Ed claims that apparently a young man had come to their occult museum. It's actually titled the Occult Museum. That's what it was called. I guess what it is still called. But that's what the name of it was. So a young man actually came to Ed and Lorraine Warren's museum with his girlfriend for a tour, and Ed was giving the tour. Ed and Lorraine Warren would give the tours of their own museum frequently. I think they might have been the only two that did the tours, but they were doing that, and the young man started to mock the Annabelle doll, started to mock the Raggedy Ann doll, and he actually ran up to the doll and started tapping on the glass case. He challenged the doll even, which is just very commonly known that you never do with any type of spirit. But he challenged the doll to put scratches on him. He challenged the doll to show him its power and its strength and to hurt him. And then it was at this point that Ed actually kicked the man out of his museum. So it was to that extent. And Ed, I'm sure, had warned him to stop doing this, but he ended up kicking the man and his girlfriend out. And it was approximately 3 hours later, Ed claims that the young man died when he lost control of his motorcycle and hit a tree. His girlfriend survived the accident but remained hospitalized for over a year. There are also a couple other accounts of the doll doing very scary things to people even after it's been locked up, but I think that is going to be all for this video. Let me know what you guys think of the Raggedy Ann doll. Like I said, there is a lot of controversy behind this case specifically and just behind Ed and Lorraine Warren in general, but as always, if you're watching these videos, I'm sure you do, but these are always to keep an open mind and just to kind of escape reality for a little while and see what you think about some of the not so commonly believed things that go on in the world. So let me know what you think of this video. Let me know what you think of Annabelle or any of the whole kind of conjuring haunting series or Ed and Lorraine Warren themselves. Yeah, let me know what you think. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!